And Russian anti-government fighters say they've carried out cross-border attacks from Ukraine into Western Russia. The Freedom of Russia Legion and two other groups released this footage, which they say shows their fighters in Russia's Belgorod and Kursk regions. The groups say they crossed with tanks and have taken control of a border town. Moscow denied the claim, saying its military had repelled the attacks. More on this from Dr Marina Miron. She's a military expert and post-doctoral researcher in the War Studies Department at King's College London. Welcome back to DW, Marina. Who are these Russian anti-government paramilitary groups?
Good evening, Phil. Well, the main one here is Free Russia Legion. So these groups are operating from the Ukrainian territory and especially the Free Russia Legion. They have obviously former Russian prisoners of war who they claim have switched sides in order to fight against the Putin regime. However, these groups also claim that they have contract soldiers from the Ukrainian International Legion fighting for them as well, and that they fight in coordination with the Ukrainian armed forces. And it is to assume that they will be receiving military support as well, not just coordinating their activities. So these groups are seeking, obviously, to fight against the Putin regime, and they have made some incursions in the past year, and now we're seeing this year. Obviously, before the elections in Russia, they have increased their activities in the border regions again.
OK, so they say that they're coordinating with Ukraine. What does Ukraine say? Because the reports I've read say that the Ukraine says, well, they're nothing to do with us, they're acting independently. But that, of course, raises the question of where they're getting these advanced weapons and vehicles from.
Well, this is an interesting question, because the fact that they are coordinating with the Ukrainian forces is claimed by the members of the group. This is the information that has been provided by the BBC. However, we don't really know to what extent and with what units they are coordinating their activities and where they're getting their support from. However, given the fact that they are operating on the Ukrainian territory, it would suggest that perhaps maybe the Ukrainian military intelligence could be supporting such groups, because that might be in Ukraine's interest. But publicly, of course, you would have to distance yourself from any support. And we have seen similar scenario in 2014 when the Russians were also supporting the Donetsk People's Republic's militias without actually saying that they were doing that.
And so how active and effective have these groups been?
I think the effect of these groups is mostly in the informational domain, because if we look at the size of the groups and their activities, they haven't been very active. It is the first attack this year that came to our attention. The previous attack was last year, so they don't seem to be doing very much. However, the timing of this incursion, coupled with the drone strikes reported on the Russian territory and hitting an oil refinery, that makes a lot of sense. That before the election, there is this attempt to unsettle the population, to maybe sway the population away from Putin, and to show them that Putin and his special military operation, that it is harming Russia. And this is why these people are fighting for a different Russia. So it's more about the information and psychological effect rather than any sort of military effect, because these groups just don't have the military capabilities in order to challenge the Russian armed forces. Because if it becomes a threat to national security, of course, the Russian government will make sure to mobilize more forces and send them to the border region. So from that perspective, I don't think that they pose a serious challenge. It's more of a distraction, I would say.
Understood. Thanks very much for talking us through that, Marina Miron from King's College London.
Thank you for having me.